The wire transfer failed because the bank asked one question nobody expected. Leon Washington, 41, spent that Thursday evening comparing grocery prices in a Denver supermarket. Most people who knew him saw a quiet compliance officer with an aging Toyota, a worn Casio watch, and a habit of bringing lunch from home. What they didn't know was that one account Vanessa believed belonged to both of them had never belonged to her at all. Then his phone vibrated. Attempted transfer $247,000. Recipient Holloway Capital Holdings. And Leon stopped walking. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from and what your local time is right now. I'm always curious how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy slow burn stories where facts matter more than noise, consider subscribing so you won't miss the next one. 18 months earlier, there had been nothing dramatic about Leon Washington's life. That was exactly why so many people misread him. On paper, Leon was 41 years old and worked as an IT compliance officer for Summit Freight Logistics, a regional transportation company headquartered in downtown Denver. His office sat on the 7th floor of a glass building overlooking Interstate 25. Most mornings, he arrived at 7:15 a.m., 20 minutes before anyone else on his team. Same parking spot, same lunch cooler, same faded navy backpack. Nothing about him attracted attention. And in the social circles where his wife Vanessa spent most of her time, attention was currency. Vanessa Washington was different. She was energetic, polished, and ambitious. At 39, she had climbed her way to marketing director at Aspen Ridge Luxury Realty, one of Denver's fastest-growing luxury real estate firms. She managed advertising campaigns for multi-million-dollar mountain properties, attended networking events nearly every week, and knew exactly how to command a room. People remembered Vanessa. People rarely remembered Leon. Over the years, a story had quietly formed around them. Most of Vanessa's friends believed she was carrying the marriage financially. No one ever said it directly to Leon's face. They didn't need to. He heard it in jokes. He saw it in expressions. He noticed it whenever dinner conversations turned toward money. One Saturday evening, they attended a rooftop gathering in Cherry Creek. The host owned 3 luxury car dealerships. Most of the guests worked in real estate finance or private investment. Leon stood near a railing overlooking the city skyline holding a club soda. Across the patio, Vanessa laughed with a group of friends. A man named Trevor, a mortgage broker, nodded toward Leon. "Still driving that old Camry?" A few people laughed. Vanessa smiled awkwardly. "Leon likes reliable things." The group chuckled again. Trevor raised his wine glass. "Nothing wrong with that. Somebody's got to keep Toyota in business." More laughter. Leon simply took a sip of his drink. The conversation moved on. That was how it usually happened. People assumed silence meant weakness. They assumed calm meant lack of confidence. They assumed modesty meant lack of success. Leon never corrected them. He had stopped caring years ago. The truth was far less interesting to outsiders than the version they preferred. Every month, Leon handled the mortgage documentation. He managed their tax records. He maintained insurance policies. He monitored cybersecurity for every household account. He reviewed contracts before Vanessa signed them. He tracked spending. He maintained emergency reserves. He organized every financial document in encrypted digital archives and physical binders stored in a locked cabinet. Most people would have found the process exhausting. Leon found comfort in it. Systems made sense. Records made sense. Facts made sense. People often didn't. Vanessa used to appreciate that part of him. At least she had during the early years. Back when they rented a small apartment near Sloan's Lake. Back when both of them were building careers. Back when success felt like something they were creating together. But success changes people. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. As Vanessa's career expanded, her social world changed. The dinners became more expensive. The conversations became more competitive. The people around her became increasingly obsessed with appearances. New watches, new vehicles, new vacation homes, new status symbols. Leon noticed the change long before she did. One evening, while reviewing property tax documents at their kitchen table, he heard Vanessa sigh heavily. He looked up. "What is it?" She scrolled through photos on her phone. Do you know what Melissa and Ryan just bought?
No.
A condo in Scottsdale. Leon nodded. That's nice. Vanessa lowered the phone. That's your reaction. What should my reaction be? She stared at him. I don't know. Maybe some ambition. The words lingered in the room. Leon folded a document and placed it neatly into a folder. Ambition isn't measured by condos. Vanessa laughed softly. That's exactly what someone without a condo would say. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she returned to her phone. The conversation ended, but Leon remembered it. Not because it hurt, because it revealed something. Vanessa was beginning to compare. Comparison has a way of creating dissatisfaction where none existed before. Over the next several months, the pattern continued. She spent more time attending networking functions, more time discussing wealthy clients, more time talking about people who seemed larger than life, and less time noticing the life she already had. Leon never argued, never accused, never demanded. He simply watched, the way he always watched. That habit came from his father. Harold Washington had owned a small trucking company outside Denver. When Leon was a teenager, Harold often repeated the same lesson. People tell you who they are if you stay quiet long enough. At the time, Leon thought it sounded overly simple. Years later, he understood. Silence reveals things. People fill silence with information, and the more comfortable they become, the more they expose. That lesson would eventually save him. But not yet. At that point, the marriage was still intact, at least from the outside. Then came the charity gala. Aspen Ridge Luxury Realty hosted a fundraising event at a downtown hotel ballroom. More than 300 guests attended: developers, investors, executives, politicians. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. Leon wore the same charcoal suit he had owned for years. Vanessa wore a black designer dress. Throughout the evening, she seemed unusually excited, checking her phone, watching the entrance, adjusting her hair, waiting for someone. Leon noticed. He noticed everything. Around 8 o'clock, the ballroom doors opened. A tall man entered, custom-tailored navy suit, silver Rolex, perfect smile, the confidence of someone who enjoyed being observed. Several guests immediately recognized him. Heads turned, conversations paused. The man crossed the room toward Vanessa, and for the first time that evening, Leon saw genuine excitement in her eyes. Leon, Vanessa said. Her voice carried an energy he hadn't heard in months. I want you to meet someone. The man extended his hand. Marcus Holloway. Leon shook it. Firm grip, steady eye contact, professional smile. Nothing unusual, except for one thing. Marcus's attention lingered slightly too long, as though he wasn't evaluating Leon, as though he was measuring him. And for reasons Leon couldn't yet explain, that small detail stayed with him long after the introduction ended. Because sometimes the beginning of a disaster doesn't look like a disaster at all. Sometimes it looks like a handshake. Marcus Holloway knew how to make an entrance. The moment he stepped into the ballroom that night, conversations shifted toward him almost automatically. Not because he was famous, because he understood presentation. His suit fit perfectly. His silver Rolex caught the light at exactly the right moments. His smile was practiced without appearing rehearsed, and he carried himself like a man who expected every room to welcome him. Leon had spent years working in compliance. One of the first things compliance teaches is that appearances can be manufactured. Numbers are harder to fake. Records are harder to fake. But first impressions, those were easy. After their introduction, Marcus stayed near Vanessa for most of the evening. Leon observed from a distance, not suspicious, just observant. Marcus moved comfortably through conversations. Developers, investors, property managers, commercial lenders. He seemed to know everyone, or at least knew enough about them to create that impression. Whenever someone approached, Marcus had a story ready. A successful acquisition, a profitable development, a luxury property sale, an upcoming investment opportunity. People listened. People laughed. People admired. Vanessa looked especially impressed. Leon noticed the difference immediately. She leaned forward when Marcus spoke, asked questions, maintained eye contact longer than usual. Small things. But small things often become larger things. Later that evening, Leon found himself standing beside Marcus near the hotel bar. For a few moments, they were alone. Marcus glanced toward the crowd. "Your wife is impressive." Leon nodded. "She works hard." Marcus smiled. "Most people don't realize how valuable that is." "No argument there." Marcus took a sip of bourbon. "What about you? What about me? What exactly do you do?" "I'm in compliance." Marcus laughed softly. "That sounds exciting." "It usually isn't." "Fair enough." The conversation could have ended there. Instead, Marcus continued. "Vanessa mentioned you handle most of the household financial stuff." The comment caught Leon's attention, not because it was secret information, because of how quickly Marcus arrived there. They had known each other less than 10 minutes, yet somehow finances had entered the discussion. "Some of it," Leon answered. Marcus nodded. "Smart." He swirled the ice in his glass. "I've seen marriages collapse because people don't understand their money." Leon said nothing. Marcus continued. "Real estate, investments, retirement accounts, debt structures. Most couples have no clue." Again, Leon remained quiet. Marcus smiled. "You don't seem like most couples." Leon simply shrugged. The conversation ended shortly afterward. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming. But later, while driving home through downtown Denver, Leon found himself replaying it. Not the words. The timing. Marcus had steered the discussion toward finances with unusual speed. Most people talked about careers first. Sports, travel, politics. Marcus had chosen assets. It was a small detail, yet Leon remembered it. Weeks passed. Marcus became a regular presence, at first through social events, then through text messages, then through phone calls. Vanessa mentioned him more frequently, sometimes casually, sometimes enthusiastically. "Marcus just closed another commercial deal." "Marcus knows someone buying property in Aspen." "Marcus says Denver's luxury market is about to explode." "Marcus invested in a development project near Boulder." Marcus seemed to have an opinion on everything, and increasingly, Vanessa valued those opinions. One Friday evening, Leon arrived home to find Marcus sitting at their kitchen island. The sight surprised him. He hadn't known Marcus was coming over. The two men exchanged greetings. Vanessa appeared excited. "We were talking about investment opportunities." Marcus grinned. "Nothing official." Leon placed his keys on the counter. "What kind of opportunities?" Marcus launched into a detailed explanation involving commercial property redevelopment. The presentation sounded polished, maybe too polished. Certain numbers felt unusually rounded. Several projected returns seemed optimistic. Not impossible, just convenient. Leon listened carefully. When Marcus finished, Leon asked a simple question. "Who is underwriting the debt?" The room became quiet. Marcus blinked, just briefly. Then he smiled. "We're still evaluating financing partners." A reasonable answer, except it didn't fit the rest of his presentation. A project that advanced wouldn't still be evaluating basic financing structures. Leon noticed. Vanessa didn't. She was focused on the potential profits. After Marcus left, she turned toward Leon. "What did you think?" "He seems confident." "That's all." Leon sat down. "What answer are you looking for?" Vanessa sighed. "You always do this." "Do what?" "You never get excited about anything." Leon looked at her. "I get excited when the numbers make sense." She rolled her eyes. "Marcus takes risks." "Maybe. And that's why successful people succeed." Leon didn't respond. The conversation ended there, but something had changed. Vanessa no longer compared Leon to other husbands. Now she compared him to Marcus. The difference mattered. Over the following months, Marcus appeared more frequently. Dinner invitations, networking events, weekend gatherings. The friendship seemed to deepen, at least on Vanessa's side. Leon maintained distance, not out of jealousy, out of caution. Several times Marcus brought up financial topics again, always casually, always indirectly. A question about mortgage rates, a question about retirement planning, a question about property values, a question about investment accounts. Individually harmless, together unusual. One evening during a backyard barbecue, Marcus sat beside Leon near the grill. Children played in neighboring yards. Music drifted from a nearby patio. The atmosphere felt relaxed. Marcus handed Leon a bottle of water. "You still living in the same place?" "Yes. House is probably appreciated nicely." "Probably," Marcus nodded. "You ever think about leveraging the equity?" Leon looked at him. "For what?" "Investments." Leon smiled slightly. "I don't borrow money to make speculative investments." Marcus laughed. "See? That's exactly why people underestimate you." The statement hung in the air. Leon studied him carefully. "People underestimate me." Marcus shrugged. "Come on, you know what I mean." "No, you don't exactly advertise success." Leon took a drink of water. "That's never been important to me." Marcus smiled again. "Maybe it should be." Leon didn't answer. A few moments later, Marcus stood and walked away. But Leon remembered the exchange. Not because Marcus had insulted him, because Marcus seemed unusually interested in how much Leon might actually have. The questions kept circling back. Assets, accounts, equity, investments, ownership, money. By then, Leon had begun paying closer attention. Not investigating, just observing. And observation eventually revealed something else. One night, Vanessa left her phone charging on the kitchen counter while she showered upstairs. Leon wasn't searching through it. He simply noticed the screen illuminate from an incoming message. The preview disappeared before he could read it. But the sender's name remained visible. MH Capital. Not Marcus Holloway. Not Marcus. Not MH. MH Capital. A business label. Almost like she had categorized him professionally. Leon stared at the screen for several seconds. Something about it felt deliberate, curated, managed. A presentation rather than a relationship. When Vanessa returned downstairs, she picked up the phone immediately. Too quickly. Then she smiled. "Work stuff." Leon nodded. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. He didn't ask, because questions often make people defensive. Observation rarely does. And as Harold Washington had taught him years earlier, people reveal more when they believe nobody is watching. That night, long after Vanessa fell asleep, Leon sat alone in the dark kitchen. Rain tapped softly against the windows. His laptop remained closed. His phone remained silent. Yet one thought kept returning. Marcus Holloway was asking too many questions. Not about Leon. Not about his career. Not about his life. About his assets. And sooner or later, people who ask the wrong questions usually reveal why. Leon just didn't know the answer yet. But he had a feeling he would soon. The separation conversation happened on a Tuesday. It was cold outside. A light layer of snow covered the lawns throughout their Lakewood neighborhood, and the sky had already turned dark by the time Leon pulled into the driveway. Nothing seemed unusual at first. The porch light was on. Vanessa's SUV sat in its usual spot. The television glowed faintly through the front window. Normal, ordinary. But the moment Leon stepped inside, he felt it. The silence was different, not peaceful, prepared. The dining room table had been cleared. No mail, no unopened packages, no work documents, just a laptop, a yellow legal pad, and a printed spreadsheet. Vanessa sat waiting, her hands folded neatly in front of her, as though she had rehearsed this. Leon placed his keys on the counter. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Vanessa broke the silence. "We need to talk." Most people dread hearing those words. Leon didn't. Not because they were harmless, because they usually arrived long after the real decision had already been made. He pulled out a chair and sat down. "Okay." Vanessa took a slow breath. "I don't think this marriage is working anymore." The sentence landed exactly as she intended. Direct, final. No room for misunderstanding. Leon studied her face, not looking for emotion, looking for certainty. And he found it. This wasn't a temporary argument. This wasn't frustration. This wasn't a request for change. This was a conclusion. "How long have you felt that way?" he asked. Vanessa looked down briefly. "A while." Leon nodded. The answer itself didn't matter. People often say "a while" when the real answer would create more questions. He wasn't interested in questions. He was interested in facts. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Vanessa seemed surprised by his calmness. For a moment she appeared almost disappointed. Perhaps she had expected anger. Perhaps she had prepared for a fight. Instead, Leon simply waited. "I want a separation." There it was, official, spoken aloud. Leon leaned back slightly. "Okay." Another pause. Again, Vanessa looked unsettled. People often become uncomfortable when their expectations fail. She had expected resistance. Instead, she was getting cooperation. Eventually, she turned her laptop around. The spreadsheet appeared on the screen. Columns, percentages, property values, account balances, estimated equity, retirement figures, vehicle valuations, a complete financial inventory, or at least an attempt at one. "I've already organized everything," Vanessa said. Leon looked over the document. Mortgage, joint checking, joint savings, credit cards, vehicles, insurance policies, retirement accounts, investment applications, household assets. The spreadsheet was detailed, more detailed than he expected. Too detailed. Because Vanessa had never cared much about spreadsheets. She hated spreadsheets, always had. Yet this one looked professionally prepared. Every category neatly organized, every formula functioning correctly, every asset assigned a projected value. Someone had helped her. Leon already knew who. "Marcus," he asked. Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly. "What about him? Did he help prepare this?" She hesitated. Only for a second, but Leon noticed. "Some of it." That answer told him enough. Marcus wasn't simply giving advice anymore. He was participating. Directly. Leon continued reviewing the document. The deeper he looked, the more issues appeared. Several valuations were inflated. Certain liabilities were missing. Some ownership descriptions were inaccurate. One section caught his attention immediately. Account holdings. There were 9 financial accounts listed. Checking accounts, savings accounts, brokerage accounts, credit lines. Then one specific entry. Rocky Mountain Federal Reserve account. Joint ownership. Leon read the line twice. Then a third time. His expression never changed. But internally, something clicked into place. The account wasn't joint. Never had been. Not once. Not on the day it was opened. Not after the marriage. Not after any subsequent updates. It belonged exclusively to an entity entirely separate from their marital finances. The mistake was significant, yet Leon remained silent. Vanessa interpreted the silence differently. She mistook it for weakness. Many people did. "I want everything handled fairly," she said. "We'll divide assets appropriately." Leon nodded. "Fair sounds reasonable." Relief crossed her face. She had expected an argument. Instead, she received agreement. That made her confident. Perhaps too confident. She pointed toward the spreadsheet. "I'll need access to everything." "What does that mean?" "Account information, statements, login credentials where necessary." Leon looked up. "Everything. Everything." The word lingered. Interesting choice. Not documents, not records, not disclosures. Access. Marcus's influence was becoming increasingly visible. Because experienced attorneys ask for documentation. Inexperienced opportunists ask for passwords. Leon folded his hands. "I'll provide whatever is legally required." Vanessa frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means exactly what I said." Her expression hardened. "You don't trust me." Leon almost smiled. Not because the question was funny, because of its timing. Trust had apparently become important only after she requested separation. Still, he kept his voice steady. "This isn't about trust." "Then what is it about?" "Procedure." Vanessa leaned back. Frustration flashed across her face. Leon recognized it immediately. She wasn't upset by resistance. She was upset by structure. Structure creates accountability, and accountability often complicates plans. The conversation continued for another hour. Schedules, living arrangements, temporary expenses, property maintenance, household bills. Every topic remained surprisingly civil. By the time Leon stood to leave the table, most immediate issues had been addressed, at least superficially. But one thing had become clear. Marcus Holloway was no longer a background figure. His fingerprints were everywhere, on the spreadsheet, on the terminology, on the strategy, on the assumptions, especially the assumptions. Later that night, after Vanessa went upstairs, Leon remained alone in the kitchen. The spreadsheet sat before him. The Rocky Mountain Federal entry remained visible. Joint ownership, incorrect. Dangerously incorrect. Leon opened his laptop, not to investigate Marcus, not to build a defense, simply to verify facts. Facts mattered, always. Within minutes, he had confirmed what he already knew. Nothing had changed. The account remained exactly as it had always been. Separate, protected, documented, legal. He closed the laptop. Then he reached for his phone. The next morning, he called Rebecca Nolan. Rebecca's office occupied the 23rd floor of a building overlooking downtown Denver. She specialized in complex asset division cases. Several colleagues had recommended her over the years. Leon had never expected to need her. Yet here he was. 3 days later, he sat across from her conference table. Rebecca reviewed documents while taking notes. 45 minutes passed. Then she stopped. Her pen froze above the page. She looked up. "What is this account?" Leon glanced at the document. "Which one?" She pointed. "Rocky Mountain Federal," Leon answered carefully. "A reserve account connected to a trust." Rebecca continued reading. Then she opened another document, and another. Her eyes narrowed. A few more moments passed. Finally, she removed her glasses. "Has Vanessa ever claimed ownership of this before?" "No." "Does she understand what it actually is?" "I don't think so." Rebecca nodded slowly. Then she turned the paperwork toward him. Her finger rested directly on the ownership section. The legal language was clear, unambiguous, not open to interpretation, not open to debate. Rebecca looked directly at him. "Leon, I need to ask you something." "What?" Her voice remained calm, professional, measured, but there was unmistakable concern beneath it. "Does Vanessa know this account was never jointly owned in the first place?" Leon stared at the paperwork. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he answered, "No." Rebecca leaned back in her chair, and for the first time since the meeting began, she looked genuinely interested. Because if Vanessa didn't know that fact yet, someone was eventually going to discover it, and when they did, the consequences would be much larger than a divorce. Rebecca Nolan had spent nearly 15 years handling divorces involving hidden money. Business owners concealed assets. Spouses moved funds. Partners transferred ownership on paper while maintaining control behind the scenes. She had seen nearly every variation. That was why her reaction caught Leon's attention. She wasn't worried. She was curious. And curiosity from an attorney usually meant something important had been discovered. Rebecca closed the file and folded her hands. "Start from the beginning." Leon nodded. "The account isn't mine personally." "Then whose is it?" "It's owned by the Washington Freight Legacy Trust." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "I didn't see that mentioned anywhere in Vanessa's spreadsheet." "She doesn't know much about it." "Explain." For several seconds, Leon looked through the conference room window. Traffic moved below. Snow drifted slowly across downtown Denver. His thoughts traveled much farther. Back almost 20 years. Back to a time before Vanessa. Back before Summit Freight Logistics. Back before the mortgage. Back before the quiet suburban life everyone assumed they understood. Back to Harold Washington, his father. Harold had built Washington Freight Services from almost nothing. One truck, one trailer, one customer. That was how it started. Over time, the business grew. Not dramatically, not enough to attract headlines, but enough to support a family, enough to put food on the table, enough to survive for years. Then came the recession. Fuel prices increased. Several major customers disappeared. Contracts collapsed. Cash flow evaporated. Within 18 months, the company was fighting for survival. Leon had been 23 at the time, fresh out of college, working his first technology job. Most people expected him to build his own career and move on. Instead, he spent nights helping his father save the business, reviewing invoices, tracking expenses, negotiating payment schedules, digitizing records, cutting waste, finding inefficiencies. Harold understood trucking. Leon understood systems. Together they managed something few people thought possible. They kept the company alive, not profitable. Alive. There was a difference. A year later, things slowly improved. New contracts arrived. Debt decreased. Customers returned. Washington freight services stabilized. And then something unexpected happened. Harold got sick. The diagnosis arrived suddenly. Aggressive cancer. No warning. No preparation. No second chances. Within 11 months, he was gone. Leon still remembered the final conversation they shared inside a hospital room overlooking the foothills west of Denver. The machines beeped quietly. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant. Harold's voice was weak, but his mind remained sharp. People think money is what protects a family. Leon sat beside him, listening. That's not true. Harold paused, breathing carefully. Records protect a family. Another pause. Structure protects a family. He looked directly at Leon. Ownership matters. At the time, Leon didn't fully understand. Years later, he would. After Harold passed away, ownership of the company transferred according to a carefully prepared estate plan. Part of the proceeds, part of the remaining assets, part of Harold's life insurance. All of it moved into a legal trust structure, Washington Freight Legacy Trust. The purpose was simple: protect family assets, preserve business value, prevent future complications. Everything documented, everything reviewed by attorneys, everything transparent. Years later, when several freight assets were sold and reorganized proceeds flowed into a reserve account maintained at Rocky Mountain Federal Credit Union. The account remained under trust ownership, not Leon's personal ownership, not marital ownership, trust ownership. The distinction mattered enormously. Rebecca listened carefully as Leon explained. When he finished, she nodded slowly. That's why the paperwork is so clear. Exactly. She tapped the folder. And Vanessa never asked questions. Not really. Rebecca seemed surprised. She saw statements, occasionally. She saw deposits. Yes. She saw balances, sometimes. Rebecca shook her head slightly. Then why didn't she investigate? Leon almost smiled, because the answer was obvious. People tend to ignore things they believe they already understand. Vanessa had seen the account many times. She simply assumed it belonged to both of them. Assumption had replaced curiosity, and assumptions were dangerous, especially in legal matters. Rebecca opened another document. What kind of balance are we talking about now? Leon gave her the number. For the first time during the meeting, Rebecca leaned back in silence, not because the amount was extraordinary, because it was significant enough to attract attention, significant enough to tempt someone, significant enough to create problems if misunderstood. Finally, she spoke. You realize what Marcus probably sees when he looks at this? Leon nodded. A large account. Exactly. She pointed at the paperwork. He doesn't see ownership structure. He doesn't see trust law. He doesn't see estate protections. He sees a number. Leon already understood. That was what worried him. Not the money itself, the misunderstanding surrounding it. Because people who chase numbers often ignore details, and details are where consequences live. The meeting continued for another hour. Rebecca reviewed documents, trust agreements, historical statements, ownership certificates, estate records. Every piece reinforced the same conclusion. The account was separate, protected, and legally distinct from the marital estate. Eventually, Rebecca closed the file. "I need you to do something." "What?" "Nothing." Leon looked at her. "Nothing." "Exactly." She folded the documents neatly. "Don't warn Vanessa." "Why not?" "Because people reveal intentions when they believe they're right." Leon considered that. It sounded remarkably similar to something Harold would have said. Rebecca continued, "If she's mistaken, let her remain mistaken. If Marcus is influencing her, let him keep talking. If they think the account belongs to them, they'll eventually show what they intend to do." Leon nodded slowly. That made sense. Evidence was easier to collect when people acted voluntarily. Rebecca's expression became serious. "Just document everything. Emails, texts, requests, account changes, every interaction." Leon almost laughed. Documentation was his default setting. Rebecca didn't know she was giving instructions to someone who had spent 2 decades organizing evidence for a living. A few days later, Leon returned home after work. The atmosphere inside the house had changed. Vanessa was increasingly impatient, increasingly confident, as though she believed the outcome had already been decided. At dinner, she barely touched her food. Her attention remained fixed on her phone. Several messages arrived. Leon noticed the smile that appeared each time. "Marcus." "Almost certainly." Eventually, Vanessa set down her fork. "I need access to some account information." There it was, sooner than expected. Leon remained calm. "What information?" "The financial accounts." "Which ones?" "All of them." Again, the same word, all. Leon sipped his water. "What specifically do you need?" Vanessa frowned. "Why are you making this difficult?" "I'm asking a question." "I want login access." Not records, not statements, not disclosures. Login access. Rebecca had predicted it perfectly. Leon placed his glass on the table. "You'll receive whatever information your attorney requests through proper channels." Her expression hardened immediately. "So that's a no." "It's a legal process." Vanessa laughed, a short, irritated laugh. "You act like everything is a legal process." Leon said nothing, because everything eventually became a legal process when relationships broke down. That was reality. Vanessa stood, collected her phone, walked toward the living room, then stopped. Without turning around, she spoke. "Marcus says you're being unreasonable." Leon looked up. The statement lingered in the air. Interesting. Not because Marcus disagreed, because Marcus was apparently discussing Leon's financial decisions in enough detail to form opinions. A boundary had already disappeared. Vanessa left the room. Leon remained seated. The house became quiet again. Outside, snow drifted across the backyard fence. Inside, Leon replayed the conversation. Not emotionally, analytically. Every request, every word, every assumption. And one fact stood above all the others. Vanessa still believed she understood that account. She believed it belonged to both of them. She believed access was simply a matter of asking. What she didn't know was that the account sat behind legal walls she had never noticed. And somewhere beyond those walls, someone else was becoming increasingly interested in getting inside. The first password change happened on a Monday morning. Leon was already at his desk when the notification appeared. 8:12 a.m. Account recovery email updated. The alert came from one of their shared financial platforms. Nothing critical. A joint budgeting application linked to several household accounts. Leon opened the notification. The recovery email had been changed from Vanessa's personal address to a new address he didn't recognize. The username included the word capital. Interesting. He closed the notification. Then he created a folder. The folder's name was simple: Account Activity. Inside it, he saved a screenshot. Timestamp included. 3 minutes later, he returned to work. Most people would have reacted immediately. Called, texted, started an argument. Leon did none of those things, because reactions destroy information. Patience collects it. That evening, he arrived home to find Vanessa sitting in the living room. She seemed relaxed, almost cheerful. A glass of wine rested on the coffee table beside her. Leon hung his coat. "How was your day?" "Good," she smiled. "Busy." Nothing more. No mention of account changes, no mention of passwords, no mention of Marcus. Leon nodded and walked toward the kitchen. The next notification arrived 2 days later. Then another, and another. Each one followed the same pattern. Recovery settings changed, authorized device updated, security questions modified, verification preferences altered, individually harmless, collectively revealing. Someone was systematically taking control of every account they could access. Not stealing, not yet. Consolidating control. Leon documented everything. Every email, every notification, every timestamp, every device registration. His archive began growing rapidly. By the end of the second week, the folder contained 37 entries. Rebecca would appreciate that later. Meanwhile, Vanessa's behavior continued shifting. The distance between them had become obvious. Dinner conversations disappeared. Shared routines vanished. Even basic communication felt transactional. One evening, while sorting mail at the kitchen counter, Leon overheard part of a phone conversation from the backyard patio. Vanessa's voice carried through the open sliding door. "He's still being difficult." A pause, then laughter. Another pause. "Well, Marcus, that's because you're not married to him." Leon continued sorting envelopes, not listening intentionally, simply hearing what traveled inside. A few moments later, Vanessa came back indoors. The call ended immediately. Coincidence? Perhaps. But Leon filed the observation away. A week later, another development appeared. Joint credit card activity. Nothing fraudulent, nothing illegal, just unusual. The first charge came from a luxury steakhouse in downtown Denver, $382. The next appeared at a boutique hotel, $497. Then another restaurant, then another hotel, then a high-end electronics store, then a designer clothing retailer. Each charge landed on accounts still technically shared. Vanessa had legal access. That wasn't the issue. The issue was volume. The spending pattern had changed dramatically, and the timing mattered, because separation discussions had already begun. Leon reviewed statements quietly, not judging, not accusing, simply documenting. That word again, documenting. His father would have approved. Harold Washington had believed records were the closest thing to truth people possessed. Memory changes, stories change, records don't. By mid-February, Marcus's influence was visible almost everywhere. His language appeared in Vanessa's emails. His terminology appeared in financial discussions. Even legal correspondence began reflecting phrases Leon had heard Marcus use months earlier. Investment exposure, asset leverage, capital positioning. They sounded impressive. They also sounded remarkably similar regardless of context. Leon found that interesting. The more Marcus spoke about money, the more Leon suspected Marcus respected appearances more than fundamentals. Real investors discuss risk. Marcus mostly discussed upside. That difference mattered. One Friday afternoon, Rebecca called. "How are things?" "Predictable." Meaning, more account changes. "Good." Leon smiled slightly. Most people would not have described that situation as good. Rebecca did, because evidence accumulates, and evidence had become their strongest ally. She asked several questions, reviewing timelines, comparing notifications, tracking access changes. Then she paused. "Any request for the trust account?" "Not directly." Yet. Rebecca's tone remained calm. "They'll eventually get there." Leon believed that, too. The account represented the largest visible balance associated with his name. Sooner or later, curiosity would arrive. The question wasn't whether. The question was when. The answer arrived sooner than expected. 3 days later. Sunday evening, 4:43 p.m. Leon sat alone in the home office reviewing transportation compliance reports for work. Outside, snow fell steadily. Inside, the house remained quiet. Then an email appeared. From Vanessa. Subject line, financial information request. Formal, deliberately formal. He opened it. Several paragraphs, several account references, several requests. Then one specific section. Rocky Mountain Federal. The trust account. At last, Leon read the message twice. The wording caught his attention. Not because of what it said, because of what it assumed. The account was described as marital property, joint funds, shared assets, language repeated throughout the email, language that had likely originated somewhere else. Marcus, almost certainly. Leon forwarded the email to Rebecca. Then he archived a copy. No response. Not yet. The following morning, another notification appeared. This one came from Rocky Mountain Federal. Security verification notice. Leon opened it immediately. Someone had attempted to update contact preferences associated with the account. The request failed automatically. No changes occurred. No funds moved. No access granted. But the attempt existed, and attempts create records. Leon saved the notification. Then another. Then another. Throughout the next week, multiple failed actions appeared. Password recovery request. Unauthorized credential reset. Verification inquiry. All unsuccessful. All documented. Each one generated electronic fingerprints, IP addresses, device identifiers, timestamps, metadata. Most people never think about metadata. Compliance officers do. Metadata tells stories, often more honestly than people do. One evening, Leon sat in Rebecca's office reviewing the growing file. The stack had become substantial. Emails, notifications, screenshots, access logs, correspondence. Rebecca turned another page, then another, then another. Finally, she looked up. "They're getting impatient." Leon nodded. "I noticed. They believe they're entitled to something." "They do." Rebecca tapped the file. "An entitlement makes people careless." The statement lingered, because carelessness had already begun appearing. Not dramatic mistakes, small ones, repeated ones, the kind that accumulate, the kind investigators love. As February turned into March, the failed attempts continued. Then, unexpectedly, they stopped. For nearly 10 days, nothing. No requests, no access changes, no security notifications. Silence. That concerned Leon more than activity, because activity reveals movement. Silence suggests planning. One Thursday evening, he returned home after work and noticed Vanessa sitting at the kitchen island. Her laptop remained open. Several documents covered the countertop. Marcus sat beside her. Neither expected Leon home so early. For a brief moment, surprise crossed both faces. Then it disappeared. Marcus recovered first. "Hey, Leon." Leon nodded. "Marcus." The laptop screen closed immediately. Too quickly. Another detail. Another observation. Marcus stood, gathered his coat, smiled. "Good seeing you." Then he left. No explanation, no discussion, nothing. After the front door closed, Vanessa avoided eye contact. She focused on organizing papers that didn't need organizing. Leon didn't ask questions. Questions invite rehearsed answers. Observation reveals authentic behavior. Later that night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, Leon sat alone in the darkness of the home office. The trust account portal remained open on his monitor. Everything looked normal. Balances unchanged, permissions unchanged, ownership unchanged. For several minutes, he reviewed recent security logs. Routine, familiar, comforting. Then something appeared. A new entry. Timestamp 11:17 p.m. Failed login attempt. Not on a shared account. Not on a household platform. Not on a credit card portal. The trust account. Washington Freight Legacy Trust. Someone had finally tried to get inside. Leon stared at the screen. The account they supposedly understood. The account they believed belonged to both spouses. The account protected by layers of ownership they had never bothered to read. Someone had just knocked on the door, and for the first time, Leon suspected they weren't merely curious anymore. They were trying to get in. Leon didn't sleep much that night. Not because he was afraid, because the failed login attempt confirmed something he had suspected for months. Curiosity had evolved into action. Someone had moved beyond asking questions. Someone had tried to access the account. At 6:12 the next morning, he was already sitting inside his Camry in the parking lot of Rocky Mountain Federal Credit Union. The branch sat in a quiet, commercial area west of downtown Denver. Small building, brick exterior, no luxury branding, no marble floors, no private investment lounges, just a credit union that had quietly served local businesses for decades. The kind of place most people ignored. Leon appreciated places like that. They focused on records instead of appearances. At 8:00 a.m., the doors opened. By 8:05, he was sitting across from branch manager Denise Parker. Denise had worked with the trust account for years. She knew Leon. More importantly, she knew the paperwork. She reviewed the notification on her screen. Then she looked up. "I was expecting your call." Leon nodded. "How serious is it?" Denise didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned her monitor toward him. Several security entries filled the screen. Login attempts, verification requests, credential recovery actions, access inquiries. Each timestamp lined up almost perfectly with the notifications Leon had archived. "These started escalating 2 weeks ago," she said. Leon studied the screen. The pattern was obvious now. First came information requests, then verification attempts, then recovery requests, then direct login efforts. A progression, step by step. Denise clicked another screen. Additional records appeared. Last night's login wasn't random. Leon looked closer. Meaning, it wasn't someone guessing. She enlarged a section of the report. The user already knew the account number. That mattered. Trust accounts weren't publicly searchable. You needed specific information. Someone had obtained it. Somehow. Leon remained silent. Denise continued. They also knew enough personal information to pass the first verification layer. Another detail. Another piece. The person wasn't working blind. They believed they had legitimate access. Or believed they should. Denise opened a different report. This one made Leon sit slightly straighter. The heading read, "Pending Wire Transfer Review." "What is that?" Denise looked at him carefully. "A transfer request." For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Leon asked the obvious question. "How much?" Denise turned the monitor. $247,000. The same amount from the fraud alert. The same amount from the notification he had received in the King Soopers parking lot. Seeing it on an official bank screen made it feel different. More real. More deliberate. Not a mistake, not confusion. An actual attempt. Denise continued. "The transfer was automatically flagged before completion." "Why?" She clicked another section. "Several reasons. Large amount. New destination. Ownership mismatch." Then she pointed at one specific line. "Beneficiary. Holloway Capital Holdings, LLC." Leon read it twice. The name didn't surprise him. The directness did. There it was. No layers. No distance. No ambiguity. Straight from the trust account. Straight toward Marcus Holloway's company. Denise folded her hands. "You know this organization?" "Yes." Her expression remained professional. Nothing more. No judgment. No assumptions. Just facts. "Then we're going to need additional documentation." Leon nodded. "Whatever you need." For the next 40 minutes, they reviewed records. Trust ownership documents, authorization requirements, account controls, historical activity. Every page reinforced the same conclusion. The transfer should never have been possible, yet someone had tried anyway. Finally, Denise opened the most important report, Access Origin Analysis. A map appeared, then device information, then network data. Leon recognized the significance immediately. Compliance professionals live inside information like this. IP addresses, device fingerprints, access histories, digital trails. Most people don't realize how much information systems collect. Leon did. And what he saw made his jaw tighten slightly. The originating network belonged to a residential internet provider. One specific residential internet provider. At one specific address. His house. Vanessa's house. Their house. Denise pointed toward the screen. The requests originated from this connection. Leon stared at the address. There was no uncertainty, no ambiguity. The attempts came from inside the home, not overseas, not through a hacker network, not through an anonymous proxy, from the house. Denise clicked again. Another report appeared. Device data, operating system, browser information, hardware identifiers. And there it was. Laptop name MH Investments. For the first time all morning, Leon felt actual anger. Not explosive anger, not emotional anger. The colder version. The kind that arrives when facts eliminate doubt. Because doubt had disappeared. The device didn't belong to Vanessa. The label was obvious. Marcus. Denise quietly observed his reaction. Then she spoke carefully. "Mr. Washington, I need to ask an important question." "Okay." "Did you authorize anyone else to access this account?" "No." "Ever, no." "Have you shared credentials?" "No." She nodded. The answers matched the records. That was good. Consistency matters, especially when legal issues begin. And legal issues were definitely beginning. Denise printed several reports, placed them neatly into a folder. Then she leaned back. "The account is frozen temporarily." Leon looked up. "Frozen. Protective freeze. No funds can leave. No ownership changes. No authorization modifications. Nothing moves until our investigation is complete." Leon felt relief, not because he doubted the account's protection, because the freeze created another layer of documentation, another layer of evidence, another layer of accountability. Everything now existed inside official procedures, exactly where he wanted it. By noon, he was sitting inside Rebecca Nolan's office. The folder rested between them. Rebecca reviewed every page carefully. When she reached the transfer request, she stopped. Then she read it again. $247,000. Leon nodded. Rebecca continued reading. Then she reached the device information. A long silence followed. Finally, she placed the papers down. "Well?" Leon waited. Rebecca removed her glasses. "That escalated quickly." "Agreed." She tapped the transfer request. "This isn't curiosity anymore." "No. This is attempted acquisition." Leon understood the distinction. Questions are harmless. Requests can be harmless. Transfer attempts are not. Rebecca continued reviewing. Then she reached the network information. Her expression changed immediately. She looked at Leon. "The requests originated from your residence." "Yes." "And this device?" She pointed at the laptop identification. Leon nodded again. Rebecca slowly exhaled. The significance was obvious. Digital evidence, financial evidence, ownership evidence, all pointing in the same direction. Cases become dangerous when evidence conflicts. This evidence didn't conflict. It aligned, almost perfectly. Rebecca stood and walked toward the window. Denver traffic moved below. For several moments she said nothing. Then she turned back. When people think they're entitled to something, they often convince themselves rules don't apply. Leon remembered Harold saying something similar years earlier. Entitlement creates blindness. Blindness creates mistakes. Marcus had apparently made one, a large one. Rebecca returned to her chair. Then she said something Leon hadn't expected. "Mr. Washington, this may no longer be primarily a divorce matter." The room became quiet, because both of them understood what that meant. Family court handles disagreements, property disputes, asset division. This was different. Someone had attempted to move money from an account they didn't own. Someone had submitted requests they weren't authorized to submit. Someone had created a documented trail, and that trail was becoming increasingly difficult to explain. Rebecca picked up the folder one final time. Then she looked directly at Leon. "Keep doing exactly what you've been doing. No confrontations, no accusations, no warnings. Let the evidence keep growing." Leon nodded, because evidence had already started speaking for itself, and if Marcus kept pushing, it would soon become impossible to ignore. But neither Leon nor Rebecca yet understood how much evidence was about to surface, or how many mistakes Marcus had already made. The first rule of compliance is simple. Everything leaves a trail. People imagine wrongdoing as something dramatic. Secret meetings, burner phones, hidden cash, fake identities. Reality is usually less impressive. Most people expose themselves through ordinary actions: an email sent too quickly, a document edited at the wrong time, a login from the wrong device, a signature copied from the wrong file. Small mistakes, digital mistakes, permanent mistakes. 3 days after the failed wire transfer, Rebecca Nolan assembled a meeting inside her office. The conference table was covered with documents: printed emails, account logs, authorization records, trust agreements, bank reports. Leon sat quietly, reviewing the growing pile. Rebecca stood beside a wall monitor. The investigation had expanded rapidly. Rocky Mountain Federal's fraud department had completed an initial review, and the results were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Rebecca clicked to the first document, a wire transfer authorization form. At first glance, it looked legitimate. Name, account number, transfer instructions, electronic signature. Everything appeared normal, until it didn't. Rebecca enlarged the signature section. This is where they made their first mistake. Leon looked carefully. The signature displayed Vanessa Washington's name, not Leon's, not the trust. Vanessa. Rebecca pointed toward the authorization requirements. The account requires trust authorization. Vanessa has no authority. Leon nodded. Never did. Rebecca zoomed in again. Now look at the signature. The image quality shifted. The signature wasn't original. It was copied, inserted, embedded. A scanned image, not a live signature, not electronically generated, not verified. Copied from another document entirely. Leon studied it for several moments, then recognized it. It came from a property refinancing document completed years earlier. A document Vanessa had signed during a mortgage update. The signature had been extracted and reused. Whoever prepared the transfer request apparently believed appearance was enough. It wasn't. Banks care about verification, not appearance. Rebecca moved to the next document, the metadata report. This part interested Leon immediately. Metadata never lies. The transfer form had been created 3 weeks earlier, modified 7 times, saved under multiple versions, then exported into PDF format. Every action had a timestamp. Every timestamp had a user trail. Every user trail pointed somewhere. Rebecca highlighted one section. Author, name Marcus Holloway. The room became silent. Leon wasn't surprised anymore, but seeing it documented felt different. Facts carry more weight when printed. Rebecca continued. The file wasn't merely submitted from Marcus's device. She tapped another line. He created it. No speculation, no assumptions, no interpretations, just records. The next report focused on electronic communications, emails, lots of them. Some originated from Vanessa, some from Marcus, some from attorneys, some from financial institutions. One particular chain stood out immediately. The subject line read, Asset Access Review. Rebecca opened it. The thread stretched across multiple weeks. Most messages appeared harmless. Questions about ownership, questions about balances, questions about transfers. Then a sentence appeared. One sentence. Short, casual, dangerous. If we can get access to the account, everything becomes easier. No context, no explanation, just the statement. Leon stared at it. Rebecca didn't comment. She didn't need to. The sentence spoke for itself. The next discovery arrived through DocuSign records. That surprised everyone, including Rebecca. Apparently, someone had attempted to submit additional authorization paperwork electronically. The request never completed. The bank rejected it, but DocuSign preserved the history. IP addresses, email addresses, authentication attempts, incomplete forms. Everything remained stored. And once again, Marcus's name appeared repeatedly, not always directly, sometimes through business email accounts, sometimes through affiliated domains, sometimes through connected devices, But the pattern remained. The same person, the same effort, the same objective. Access, always access. By the end of the meeting, the evidence stack had doubled. Rebecca closed another folder, then another. Finally, she sat down. The digital trail is stronger than I expected. Leon looked at the papers. Strong enough? Very. That was the closest Rebecca came to expressing satisfaction. Attorneys dislike certainty. Evidence creates certainty. This evidence was becoming increasingly difficult to challenge. Still, Leon understood something important. Evidence doesn't matter until people see it. And most of the people surrounding Vanessa hadn't seen any of it. From the outside, her life looked perfect. In fact, it looked better than ever. That became obvious every time Leon opened social media. He rarely used it, but occasionally curiosity won. The photos told a predictable story. Luxury restaurants, weekend trips, wine tastings, private events, smiling faces, perfect lighting, perfect captions. Marcus appeared frequently. Vanessa looked happy, or at least happy enough for photographs. The comments followed. So happy for you. You deserve this. Living your best life. Power couple. Leon scrolled through several posts, then closed the application. Images are easy. Documentation is harder. The contrast interested him. Online, everything looked flawless. Inside Rebecca's office, the reality looked very different. 1 week later, another development arrived. This one came from Rebecca. She called early Tuesday morning. I need you downtown. Why, we're filing. Leon immediately understood. The time for observation was ending. The time for action had arrived. Rebecca's office overlooked downtown Denver's financial district. By the time Leon arrived, several legal packets sat prepared on her desk. Emergency motions, protective requests, preservation demands, discovery filings, formal language, formal procedures, formal consequences. Rebecca reviewed each one carefully. The goal isn't punishment. Leon nodded. He already knew. The goal is protection. Exactly. She handed him several pages. We preserve evidence. We preserve records. We preserve access logs. And we prevent additional attempts. Leon signed where required. Nothing emotional. Nothing dramatic. Just paperwork. The same thing that had protected him for years. Records, ownership, documentation. Harold Washington would have approved. Before Leon left, Rebecca paused. There is one more thing. What? She opened a separate file. Smaller, thinner, newer. Private Investigative Research. Marcus Holloway. The name sat prominently across the cover. Leon felt his attention sharpen immediately. Rebecca slid the file across the table. Don't get excited. A warning like that usually meant the opposite. Leon opened the folder. Business registrations, corporate filings, civil records, debt summaries. Several pages in a pattern emerged. Not criminal, not yet. But concerning, very concerning. Outstanding liens, business disputes, contract disagreements, judgments, collections. Several companies connected to Marcus appeared financially unstable. One development project showed significant delays. Another appeared under litigation. A third showed signs of restructuring. Rebecca folded her arms. He talks like a man managing success. Leon continued reading. He looks like a man managing problems. The distinction mattered. A lot. Because people under pressure make different decisions than people operating comfortably. Pressure creates shortcuts. Pressure creates desperation. Pressure creates risk. Suddenly, the attempted transfer made more sense. Not justified, not excused, explained, at least partially. Marcus wasn't pursuing opportunity. He might have been pursuing liquidity. That realization changed everything. Rebecca continued, I don't know how bad things actually are. But they're worse than he presents publicly. Leon closed the folder. Outside the office window, afternoon sunlight reflected across downtown buildings. Inside, the situation had become clearer than ever. Marcus wanted access. The account represented money. The money represented relief. and relief can make people reckless. Rebecca gathered the documents. We're moving forward. Leon nodded. When? Today. The legal filings would begin immediately. Protective orders, discovery requests, evidence preservation notices, official processes, official scrutiny. Once filed, people would start answering questions. Real questions. Questions supported by documents. Questions supported by timestamps. Questions supported by facts. And facts are difficult to negotiate. As Leon prepared to leave, Rebecca looked down at her notes one final time. Then she frowned slightly, a rare reaction. What is it? She tapped a line near the bottom of the page. A detail. What detail? Rebecca looked up. The wire transfer wasn't the only thing they attempted. Leon stopped. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Rebecca slowly slid another report across the desk. A report he hadn't seen before. A report involving ownership modification requests. And for the first time since this situation began, Leon realized Marcus may have been trying to do something far more ambitious than transfer money. He may have been trying to gain permanent access. The first hearing took place on a gray Wednesday morning in Jefferson County. The courthouse stood less than 20 minutes from the house Leon and Vanessa had once shared. For years they had driven past the building without thinking about it. Now it had become part of their lives. Leon arrived early. Not because he was nervous, because he preferred arriving early everywhere. Old habit. His father had believed punctuality prevented mistakes. Compliance work reinforced the lesson. Being early creates options. Being late creates problems. At 8:15 a.m., Leon sat beside Rebecca Nolan inside a small conference room reserved for attorneys and clients. The hearing wouldn't determine the final outcome of the divorce. Not even close. Today's purpose was narrower. Temporary orders, asset disclosures, preservation requests, procedural matters. The kind of hearing many people underestimate. Leon didn't. Important cases are often shaped long before final judgments arrive. Rebecca reviewed several folders. Every document sat perfectly organized. Color-coded tabs, reference notes, supporting exhibits, cross-references. Leon appreciated that. Preparation always looked familiar. Across the room, Rebecca glanced at him. How are you feeling? Fine. You don't sound convinced. Leon shrugged. It's paperwork. Rebecca smiled. Most people don't describe court hearings as paperwork. Most people don't work in compliance. That earned a brief laugh. Then the courtroom doors opened. The hearing began 15 minutes later. Vanessa entered first. Professional dress, carefully styled hair, confident expression. Marcus followed a few steps behind. He wasn't a party to the case, but he was there, watching, observing, projecting confidence, at least outwardly. Leon noticed something else. Marcus looked tired. The difference was subtle. Most people wouldn't have seen it. Leon did. The man who once appeared perfectly polished now carried faint signs of strain. Slight shadows beneath his eyes. A tighter jaw, less relaxed posture. Small details. But small details matter, especially when pressure starts building. Vanessa sat beside her attorney, Gregory Mills. Experienced, well-respected, professional. Unlike Marcus, Gregory appeared focused on facts rather than appearances. That made him dangerous. Rebecca seemed to recognize it too. When the hearing began, both attorneys immediately shifted into professional mode. No theatrics, no dramatic speeches, just arguments, documents, procedures, evidence. The judge, Honorable Karen Whitmore, listened carefully while reviewing preliminary filings. For nearly 30 minutes, discussion centered on routine matters, living arrangements, expense responsibilities, property maintenance, disclosure requirements. Nothing surprising. Then Vanessa's attorney raised the issue everyone expected: undisclosed assets. Gregory stood, calm, measured, professional. Your Honor, we believe Mr. Washington has failed to fully disclose certain financial resources. Leon didn't react. Rebecca didn't either. They had anticipated this argument weeks ago. The judge looked up. What specifically are you referring to? Gregory consulted his notes. There appears to be an account containing significant funds that has not been properly characterized within the marital estate. There it was, the trust account. The room remained quiet. Rebecca stood slowly. When she spoke, her voice remained calm, almost conversational. "Your Honor, we anticipated this issue." She handed documents to the clerk. Additional copies moved toward the judge. Then Rebecca continued. "The account in question is not a marital asset." Gregory immediately objected. Rebecca continued anyway. "It is held by a trust established years before the marriage and funded through assets excluded from marital ownership." The judge began reviewing documents. Leon watched carefully. Not the judge, the attorneys. The reactions often reveal more. Gregory's confidence diminished slightly as pages turned. Rebecca's confidence increased. That difference mattered. Several minutes passed while Judge Whitmore examined trust records, formation documents, ownership certifications, historical filings, bank records. Every document told the same story. The trust existed before Vanessa had any legal connection to it. The ownership structure was clear, the language was clear, the history was clear. Eventually, the judge looked up. "These documents appear straightforward." Gregory shifted position slightly. "Your Honor, our concern involves access and usage." Rebecca responded immediately. "Access does not create ownership." A simple statement, a powerful statement. The judge nodded. Because legally it was true. Vanessa may have seen statements. She may have known the account existed. Neither fact created ownership rights. Gregory attempted another argument. Rebecca answered with documentation. Gregory raised valuation concerns. Rebecca answered with documentation. Back and forth, point, counterpoint, claim, evidence. By the time the discussion ended, the direction had become obvious. Not final, but obvious. The judge made several temporary rulings. The trust account would remain protected. No ownership changes. No access modifications. No transfers. Everything frozen pending further review. Exactly what Rebecca wanted. Then came the moment neither Gregory nor Vanessa expected. Rebecca stood again. "Your Honor, there is another matter." The courtroom became quiet. Judge Whitmore looked up. "Go ahead." Rebecca handed additional documents forward. Fresh documents, recent documents, the materials gathered from Rocky Mountain Federal. The judge reviewed the cover page, then the next page, then another. Her expression changed slightly. Not dramatically, just enough. Rebecca continued. "We have evidence suggesting unauthorized attempts were made to access and transfer funds from the trust account." For the first time all morning, Vanessa looked genuinely surprised. Leon noticed immediately. Not panic, not fear, surprise. Important difference. Rebecca continued. "The institution involved has already initiated internal fraud review procedures." Gregory stood quickly. "Your Honor, we object to any implication of misconduct without complete investigation." Reasonable objection. Expected objection. Rebecca nodded. "We agree." Then she delivered the line she had carefully prepared, "which is why we are requesting preservation orders regarding all related electronic records." The judge considered that. Preservation orders sound technical, boring, procedural. They're not. Preservation orders prevent evidence from disappearing. Emails, messages, documents, devices, everything. Judge Whitmore looked toward Gregory. "Any objection?" Gregory hesitated. Only briefly, but long enough, because objecting to evidence preservation rarely looks good. Eventually, he shook his head. "No objection." The request was granted. Just like that. One ruling, one signature, one order. And suddenly, every electronic record connected to the situation became far more important. The hearing continued. More procedural matters, more scheduling discussions, more deadlines. Eventually, the session concluded. People began gathering their belongings. Attorneys exchanged professional courtesies. Court staff organized files. The atmosphere relaxed slightly. Then Leon noticed something. Gregory Mills wasn't speaking to Vanessa. He was speaking to Marcus. Quietly, privately, several feet away. The conversation lasted less than a minute, but Gregory's expression said enough. The attorney looked concerned. Not about Leon, not about the trust, about Marcus. That interested Leon. A lot. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca and Leon walked toward the parking structure. Cold wind moved through the streets. Traffic flowed steadily around them. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, Leon broke the silence. That went better than expected. Rebecca nodded. Much. What changed? Rebecca smiled slightly. The truth had paperwork. Leon laughed quietly, a rare occurrence lately. But she was right. Stories compete. Documents don't. A few steps later, Rebecca stopped walking. She reached into her briefcase, then handed Leon a copy of one of the morning's filings. He glanced at it. Discovery request. His eyes moved lower. Specific categories, specific records, specific information. Then he saw it. Marcus Holloway, named directly. Leon looked up. Rebecca's expression had become serious again. We're requesting discovery regarding his involvement. How much involvement? Rebecca paused, then answered carefully. As much as the evidence allows us to explore. That answer carried weight, because discovery changes everything. Emails, financial records, communications, corporate filings, electronic activity. Once discovery begins, assumptions often disappear. Facts take their place. Rebecca closed her briefcase. The next phase is where things get interesting. Leon already suspected that, because Marcus had spent months asking questions, months seeking access, months positioning himself near money he didn't own. Now the process was about to reverse. Now other people would start asking questions, and unlike Marcus, those people would have subpoena power. Discovery began quietly. No dramatic confrontations, no surprise arrests, no television-style revelations, just paperwork, requests, responses, deadlines. The legal system moves slower than people expect, but when it starts moving, it has a habit of uncovering things nobody intended to reveal. 3 weeks after the first hearing, Rebecca Nolan called Leon into her office. The tone of her voice was different, not urgent. Interested? Very interested. When Leon arrived, several new folders sat on the conference table, far more than usual. Rebecca didn't waste time. We got responses. Leon sat down. Good. Rebecca slid a folder across the table. Depends on your definition. That usually meant very good, at least from a legal perspective. Leon opened the file. The first section contained corporate records connected to Marcus Holloway, business registrations, ownership disclosures, financial summaries. Most appeared routine. Then patterns began emerging. Marcus's public image and Marcus's actual finances looked very different, extremely different. For years he had presented himself as a successful real estate investor. Luxury events, high-end vehicles, exclusive networking circles, designer suits, weekend trips, the appearance of wealth. But appearances rarely appear on financial statements. Numbers tell their own story, and these numbers were struggling. Several companies linked to Marcus showed declining cash reserves. One development project had missed critical milestones. Another property venture carried significant debt. Several creditors had filed collection actions. A commercial lender had issued notices regarding late obligations. Nothing criminal, nothing illegal, but not prosperous, not even close. Leon continued reading. The deeper he went, the worse things looked. By the time he finished the third section, a clear picture had emerged. Marcus wasn't expanding. He was surviving, barely. Rebecca watched him finish, then asked a simple question. What do you notice? Cash flow problems. She smiled slightly. Exactly. That mattered, because people with healthy businesses don't usually risk creating fraudulent transfer requests. Desperate people do. The next folder focused on credit activity. This one surprised Leon more, not because of Marcus, because of Vanessa. The statements revealed spending patterns from the previous several months. Luxury restaurants, weekend resorts, boutique hotels, designer purchases, airfare, entertainment expenses, thousands of dollars, repeatedly. Many charges appeared after the separation discussion had begun. Most landed on accounts that remained jointly accessible, legally complicated, financially revealing. Rebecca highlighted several entries. Recognize these? Leon nodded. He recognized some locations. Many corresponded directly with social media posts Vanessa had shared online. Perfect photographs, perfect captions, perfect smiles. Now those moments had corresponding receipts. Interesting. Reality often looks less glamorous when itemized. Another discovery followed. This one arrived through email disclosures. Gregory Mills had produced communications responsive to court requests. The production included hundreds of pages. Most were irrelevant. Scheduling, travel, routine matters. Then came the messages involving Marcus. Not romantic messages, not personal messages, financial messages. Those were the important ones. Several threads discussed household accounts. Several discussed property valuations. Several discussed account access. One exchange particularly caught Leon's attention. Vanessa had written, "Leon keeps everything organized." Marcus replied, "Then we just need access to the organization." Leon read the line twice, then closed the page. Rebecca noticed. So did I. The statement wasn't proof of wrongdoing, not by itself, but it revealed mindset. Intentions often hide inside casual language. The next section revealed something even more damaging. Password discussions, account recovery conversations, credential changes. Nothing directly illegal, yet. But the timeline aligned perfectly with the access modifications Leon had documented months earlier. Every notification, every recovery update, every security change, the records matched, almost exactly. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. "Remember when you started saving screenshots?" Leon nodded. "Those screenshots just became valuable." He understood why. Documentation transforms suspicion into chronology. Chronology transforms claims into evidence, and evidence wins arguments. The meeting continued for nearly 2 hours. By the end, the table was covered with notes, timelines, cross-references, highlighted sections. The picture was becoming clearer. Marcus hadn't stumbled into the situation accidentally. He had become involved gradually, then deeply, then strategically, exactly the way Leon suspected. When the meeting finally ended, Rebecca gathered the folders, then paused. "There is something else." Leon looked up. That phrase usually meant trouble for someone. Rebecca opened a smaller file. This came from Financial Discovery. Inside were credit applications, loan documents, business financing requests. Several carried Marcus's signature. One carried something else, Vanessa's. Leon studied the page, then another, then another. His expression remained calm, but internally a connection formed. Vanessa had apparently co-signed obligations, multiple obligations, not enormous, but significant. Rebecca pointed to the dates. Most occurred after Marcus entered their lives. Not before, after, which meant something important. Marcus hadn't merely influenced Vanessa emotionally, he had influenced her financially. That distinction could become very expensive. For her. A week later, another development arrived. Unexpected. Leon was leaving work when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Almost. Instead, he answered. "This is Leon." A brief pause followed, then a familiar voice. "Leon." Marcus Holloway. The first direct conversation in months. Leon stopped walking. Employees moved around him in the parking garage. Nobody noticed. Marcus continued. "We should talk." Leon said nothing. Silence often encourages people to keep speaking. Marcus did. "I think things have gotten out of hand." Interesting. Not inaccurate. Just interesting. Leon leaned against a concrete pillar. "What exactly is out of hand?" Another pause. Then Marcus answered carefully. "Lawyers." That almost made Leon laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. People often dislike legal processes when those processes begin examining their behavior. Marcus continued. This doesn't need to become something bigger. Leon remained silent. Again. Marcus filled the silence. We can probably resolve everything privately. There it was. The real purpose. Not discussion. Resolution. Outside the system. Outside discovery. Outside documentation. Leon recognized the strategy immediately. Rebecca would too. What exactly are you proposing? Leon asked. Marcus hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty entered his voice. Just a conversation. Leon looked across the parking structure. Traffic moved below. The city carried on normally. Meanwhile, a man who once projected absolute confidence suddenly sounded cautious. That interested Leon. A lot. Talk to Rebecca, he said. No, I think this is between us. Wrong answer. Very wrong answer. Leon already knew Rebecca would hate that sentence. For good reason. Legal matters belong with attorneys. People trying to bypass attorneys usually have reasons. Marcus lowered his voice. I'm trying to help everyone avoid unnecessary complications. Leon almost smiled. Complications already existed. Marcus had helped create them. Finally, Leon spoke. One simple sentence. Anything you need to say can go through counsel. The line went quiet. Several seconds passed. Then Marcus exhaled. Slowly. Disappointed. Maybe frustrated. Maybe worried. Hard to tell. Eventually, he said goodbye. The call ended. Leon stared at the screen for a moment, then immediately forwarded the details to Rebecca. Time, duration, number, everything. Documentation. Always documentation. 20 minutes later, Rebecca called back. He answered immediately. Her first question came without greeting. What exactly did he want? Private conversation. A long silence followed. Then Rebecca laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was revealing. Interesting. Why? Rebecca's voice became serious again. Because people usually request private conversations when discovery starts uncovering things they don't like. Leon looked out across the Denver skyline. The sun was setting behind the mountains. Orange light reflected off glass buildings. Everything appeared calm, orderly, predictable. Yet beneath the surface, pressure was building. Marcus felt it. Rebecca felt it. And now Leon felt it too. The mask Marcus had worn for months was beginning to crack. Not publicly, not completely, but enough. Enough to reveal the strain underneath. Enough to reveal fear. And fear often causes people to make their biggest mistakes. The question wasn't whether Marcus would make another one. The question was how soon. Then 3 days later, another call arrived. This time, Marcus wasn't asking to talk. He was asking to meet. Rebecca Nolan's first response surprised Leon. Go. Leon looked across her office desk. Go, yes. I thought you'd say no. Rebecca smiled slightly. Normally I would. That answer immediately got his attention. Rebecca wasn't reckless. She wasn't impulsive. And she certainly wasn't interested in dramatic confrontations, which meant she saw value in the meeting. She leaned forward. Marcus already knows attorneys are involved. He knows discovery is happening. He knows evidence exists. She tapped a folder. And yet he still wants to meet. Leon nodded. So that means he believes he can gain something. And when people think they can gain something, they usually talk. That sounded familiar. Almost identical to something Harold Washington would have said. People reveal themselves when they believe they're in control. Rebecca continued. You are not going there to negotiate. You're not going there to argue. You're not going there to educate him. Leon smiled. Then why am I going? To listen. Simple, clean, effective. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday morning. Marcus chose the location. Huckleberry Roasters, a busy coffee shop in Denver's Sunnyside neighborhood. Public, crowded, neutral. The kind of place people choose when they want privacy without appearing secretive. Saturday arrived cold and clear. Spring had begun pushing winter out of Colorado. Patches of snow remained in shaded areas, but sunlight reflected brightly from nearby buildings. Leon arrived 10 minutes early, naturally. The coffee shop was already busy. Students, remote workers, young families, people reading newspapers, people staring at laptops. Nobody paid attention to anyone else. Perfect. Exactly the environment Marcus wanted, and exactly the environment Rebecca preferred. Before the meeting, Rebecca had arranged something simple. A witness, nothing dramatic, nothing deceptive. One of her firm's investigators sat quietly near the back of the cafe, reading a newspaper, drinking coffee, completely uninvolved, completely legal, completely unnoticed. The purpose wasn't surveillance. The purpose was observation. There is a difference. At 9:02 a.m., Marcus arrived. Leon noticed immediately that the man looked different than he had 6 months earlier. The expensive clothes remained. The polished appearance remained. The confidence remained. Mostly. But the effort required to maintain it had become visible. Dark circles lingered beneath his eyes. His smile appeared forced. His movements carried tension. Pressure leaves marks, even when people try to hide them. Marcus sat down across from Leon. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Marcus extended a hand. Leon shook it. Briefly, professionally, nothing more. Marcus forced a smile. "I appreciate you meeting me." Leon simply nodded. The silence lingered. As usual, silence won. Marcus spoke first. "Things got complicated." Interesting choice of words. Not wrong, not accurate either. Complications don't usually create forged transfer requests. People do. Still, Leon remained silent. Marcus continued. "I think we're both smart enough to understand what's happening." Again, silence. Marcus shifted slightly in his chair. The confidence he normally projected seemed harder to maintain. Finally, he leaned forward. "Look, nobody wants this turning into something bigger." Leon stirred his coffee. "Then why did it—" The question wasn't aggressive. It wasn't emotional. It was simple. Marcus paused, then smiled. A practiced smile. One Leon had seen many times before. "Misunderstandings happen." Leon almost laughed. Almost. Because misunderstanding had become Marcus's favorite word. The transfer request. Misunderstanding. The account access attempts. Misunderstanding. The ownership confusion. Misunderstanding. Every problem somehow became a misunderstanding. Marcus continued. "Vanessa believes certain assets were marital property." "That's not unusual." "No." Marcus nodded quickly. "Exactly." He seemed relieved to find agreement. Even partial agreement. That relief made him talk more, which was exactly what Rebecca predicted. Marcus continued. "People make assumptions. Attorneys make everything worse. Then everyone starts protecting themselves." Leon listened quietly. The explanation continued. Long, detailed, carefully crafted. Yet something interesting happened. The longer Marcus spoke, the less consistent the story became. Small contradictions emerged. Tiny ones, easy to miss. But Leon didn't miss them. First, Marcus suggested Vanessa handled financial matters. Then he suggested she relied entirely on his guidance. First, he claimed ignorance about account ownership. Then he referenced details only someone researching ownership would know. First, he portrayed himself as uninvolved. Then he described events from the inside. The inconsistencies accumulated slowly, like cracks forming in glass. Not catastrophic, just visible. Eventually, Marcus leaned closer. His voice lowered. "This doesn't have to continue." There it was. The real purpose. Not conversation. Resolution. Outside formal channels. Leon took a sip of coffee. "What exactly are you proposing?" Marcus looked relieved. "Finally. Progress. Or so he thought. We'd figure out a number." Leon stared at him. Marcus continued. "A settlement. A compromise. No more discovery. No more accusations. No more attorneys digging through everything." The last sentence mattered most. Marcus didn't fear the divorce. He feared the digging. That told Leon everything he needed to know. Still, he asked another question. What number? Marcus hesitated, then named one. Leon almost smiled. The amount wasn't random. It closely resembled the value Marcus likely believed he could have extracted from the trust account. Interesting. Very interesting. Marcus apparently still viewed the account as an opportunity. Even after everything, Leon sat quietly. Several seconds passed. Marcus misread the silence. People often did. He mistook it for consideration. It wasn't. Leon was simply observing. Marcus continued speaking, trying harder now, offering explanations, offering justifications, offering reasons, and the harder he tried, the more information escaped. Finally, he said something that changed everything. The sentence came casually. Too casually. The kind of sentence people say when they forget how much they've already revealed. If the bank had just processed the transfer, none of this would have happened. Silence. Instant silence. Marcus realized the mistake immediately. His expression changed. Tiny movement, barely visible. But Leon saw it. Because there it was. Knowledge. Direct knowledge. Not assumptions. Not theories. Knowledge. The transfer. The specific transfer. The one Marcus had repeatedly claimed not to understand. Not to know about. Not to be involved with. Yet suddenly he was speaking about it as though he had been part of the process. The mistake hung in the air between them. Marcus tried to recover, quickly, too quickly. That's not what I meant. Leon didn't respond. No need. Marcus kept talking. People always do. The explanation became longer, more complicated, more desperate, and with every additional sentence, the original mistake became harder to erase. Eventually, Marcus stopped. The conversation had reached a wall. For the first time all morning, uncertainty appeared openly on his face. He looked at Leon, waiting, expecting a response, an argument, a negotiation, something. Instead, Leon gave him exactly one sentence, the same sentence Rebecca would have given, the same sentence Harold probably would have appreciated. Talk to my attorney. Nothing else. No emotion. No threats. No lectures. Just facts. Marcus stared at him, then looked away. The meeting was over. Both men understood it. Several minutes later, Marcus stood, collected his coat, picked up his phone, and prepared to leave. Then something unexpected happened. In his haste, Marcus left a manila folder on the table. At first, neither noticed. Marcus walked toward the door. Several customers entered, several exited. The morning crowd shifted around them. Then Leon looked down. The folder remained beside Marcus's empty coffee cup. Unattended, unclaimed. Interesting. Very interesting. Because people rarely carry folders full of documents to casual conversations. Leon watched Marcus disappear through the front door. Then he looked back at the folder. The label was partially visible. Several pages protruded from the top. Financial documents, charts, forms, paperwork. The kind of paperwork Marcus supposedly didn't care about. The kind of paperwork Marcus supposedly knew nothing about. Leon remained seated. For several moments, he simply stared at it. Then his phone vibrated. A text from Rebecca. One sentence. How did it go? Leon looked at the forgotten folder, then typed a response. Better than expected. Because something told him the folder Marcus had accidentally left behind was about to answer questions nobody had been able to answer yet. And if Leon was right, Marcus had just handed over far more than he intended. Leon did not open the folder inside the coffee shop. That would have been careless. Carelessness was the reason he was sitting in that situation in the first place. Instead, he closed the folder carefully, picked it up, paid for his coffee, and walked outside. The spring air felt cool against his face. Denver's streets were busy with weekend traffic. People carried shopping bags. Families walked dogs. Cyclists moved along nearby streets. Normal life continued. Meanwhile, Leon carried a folder that might explain months of unanswered questions. 20 minutes later, he sat across from Rebecca Nolan in her office. The folder rested between them. Neither touched it immediately. Rebecca looked at him, Tell me exactly what happened. Leon did. Every detail, every statement, every question, every answer. Most importantly, the sentence Marcus had accidentally revealed. If the bank had just processed the transfer, Rebecca wrote it down immediately, then underlined it twice. He shouldn't have known enough to say that. No. He slipped. Yes. Rebecca nodded. Good. Not good for Marcus. Good for the truth. Finally, she opened the folder. The first document immediately caught her attention. A property valuation report. Professional looking. Official formatting. Corporate branding. Everything appeared legitimate, until Rebecca started reading. Then she frowned. Leon recognized the expression. It usually meant something wasn't right. What? Rebecca slid the report across the table. Read the numbers. Leon did. Then he saw it. Several property values had been inflated dramatically. One warehouse was listed nearly 40% above market value. Another commercial property appeared almost double its recent appraisal. The discrepancies weren't subtle. They were significant. Rebecca turned another page, then another. The pattern continued. Inflated values, altered projections, optimistic assumptions, documents designed to create a larger financial picture than reality supported. Interesting. Very interesting. The next section proved even more revealing. Ownership modification forms. Leon immediately recognized the format. Rocky Mountain Federal Documentation, the same institution that held the trust account. Several pages appeared incomplete. Some were marked draft. Others contained handwritten notes. Rebecca reviewed them carefully, then stopped. Well? Leon waited. She rotated one page toward him. A line near the bottom carried a handwritten instruction. Add authorized user after ownership confirmation. Leon read it twice, then a third time. The wording mattered. A lot. Because it suggested intent. Not confusion. Not misunderstanding. Intent. Someone had been exploring ways to establish long-term access. Not merely transfer money. Maintain access. Permanently. Rebecca continued reviewing. Another document emerged. Then another. Then something neither expected. A rough financial projection. Not for a business. For Vanessa. Expenses. Income estimates. Potential settlement scenarios. Expected asset access. Projected liquidity. The language was blunt, almost clinical. One line stood out. Trust account availability pending. Leon stared at it. No legal language. No uncertainty. No discussion about ownership. Just an assumption. Pending. As though access was inevitable. Rebecca looked at him. This wasn't a misunderstanding. No. It was a plan. Leon nodded slowly. Because she was right. Months of questions. Months of account discussions. Months of access requests. Suddenly they formed a coherent picture. The trust account had never been an accident. It had been an objective. The meeting lasted nearly 3 hours. By the end, every page had been scanned, cataloged, copied, documented. Naturally. That evening, Leon drove somewhere he hadn't visited in months, an industrial section outside Denver. Old warehouses, loading docks, storage yards. The area looked smaller than he remembered. That happens with places from childhood. Memory tends to enlarge them. Reality shrinks them. At the end of a quiet street stood a building with faded lettering. Washington Freight Services. The original warehouse. The place where Harold Washington had built his company. The place where Leon had spent countless weekends growing up. The place where everything started. He parked outside and sat for several minutes. The building wasn't active anymore. Most operations had been sold years earlier, but ownership remained. The property belonged to the trust, one of the few physical reminders of Harold's work. Eventually, Leon stepped inside. Dust floated through sunlight entering old windows. The warehouse smelled faintly of wood metal and machine oil. Familiar smells. Comforting smells. The same smells he remembered from childhood. He walked slowly between old storage areas, past loading equipment, past maintenance bays, past offices that had once felt enormous. Everything seemed quieter now. Time does that. Silence settled over old places. Leon eventually reached Harold's former office. The desk remained. So did several filing cabinets. Most records had long since been digitized, but some things stayed, because not everything needs replacing. He sat in the old chair. For a moment, memories returned. His father balancing invoices late at night, reviewing shipping schedules, checking fuel costs, teaching Leon how businesses survive, not through luck, not through appearances, through discipline, through preparation, through records. Leon smiled slightly, because the irony wasn't lost on him. The trust account Marcus wanted so badly existed because Harold believed in preparation. The ownership structure, the documentation, the legal protections, every piece had been built years before Marcus ever appeared, years before Vanessa ever cared about account access. Preparation, always preparation. Leon remained there for nearly an hour. The quiet helped, not because he needed emotional recovery, because clarity often arrives in quiet places. Eventually he stood, locked the office, and walked back outside. The sun had begun setting. Long shadows stretched across the property. He reached his vehicle, then stopped. Another vehicle sat near the warehouse entrance, a black SUV, unfamiliar, or at least unexpected. The driver's door opened. Vanessa stepped out. For several seconds, neither moved. Neither spoke. The distance between them felt larger than the parking lot. Months earlier, this encounter might have produced anger, arguments, accusations. Now it produced something else. Awkwardness. Vanessa walked slowly toward him. Her confidence seemed different lately, less certain, less polished. Discovery had apparently affected more than Marcus. She stopped several feet away. For a moment she simply looked around. The warehouse, the property, the old company sign. Pieces of Leon's life she had rarely paid attention to. "I didn't know you'd be here." Leon nodded. "I come sometimes." Vanessa looked toward the building. "You never talked much about this place." The statement surprised him, because he had. Many times, years ago, before real estate events, before Marcus, before comparison became a lifestyle. But Leon didn't correct her. There was no point. Vanessa stepped closer. Her expression softened slightly. "This is what the trust was for, isn't it?" Leon studied her face. Interesting question. Very late question, but interesting. "Partly." She nodded slowly. The answer seemed to affect her, more than she expected. For several moments, silence settled between them. Then Vanessa spoke again. "Things have gotten complicated." The same phrase Marcus used, almost identical. Leon noticed. Of course he noticed. Vanessa looked down briefly, then back up, as though searching for the right words, as though trying to understand something she should have understood much earlier. Finally, she asked a question. One simple question, the kind that arrives when certainty begins disappearing. "Leon, what exactly did Marcus tell you at that meeting?" The evening suddenly felt much quieter, because the answer to that question might change everything. For several seconds, Leon didn't answer. The evening wind moved across the warehouse lot. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed through the industrial district. Vanessa stood waiting, her arms folded loosely across her chest, not defensive, not confident, just uncertain. Leon noticed the difference immediately. For months, Vanessa had moved through every conversation with certainty. Certainty about Marcus, certainty about the divorce, certainty about the accounts, certainty about the future. That certainty was gone now, and uncertainty changes people. "What did Marcus tell you?" she asked again. Leon looked toward the warehouse, then back at her. "He talked." Vanessa frowned. "That's it. That's it." She exhaled sharply. For the first time, frustration appeared. Not the frustration he remembered from their marriage. This felt different. This felt like someone realizing information existed beyond her reach. "He had a meeting with you for over an hour." Leon nodded. "Yes." "And all you're going to say is that he talked..." "Pretty much." Vanessa stared at him, looking for emotion, looking for accusation, looking for an opening. She found none, because Leon wasn't interested in winning an argument. The documents were already doing that. Eventually, she looked away. The silence stretched. Then she spoke quietly. Something happened after that meeting. Interesting. Not a question, a statement. Leon waited. She continued. Marcus changed. That caught his attention, not because it surprised him, because she finally noticed. Pressure had been affecting Marcus for weeks. The strain had become increasingly visible. Apparently, Vanessa was seeing it now, too. How? Leon asked. She hesitated, as though choosing words carefully. He started getting angry. Leon said nothing. Not all the time. But more. She looked toward the fading sunlight beyond the warehouse. He stopped answering certain questions. He became defensive. Everything suddenly became urgent. The pattern sounded familiar. People become defensive when explanations stop working. Discovery has a way of creating that problem. Vanessa continued. Then the attorneys started requesting documents. There it was, the real issue. Not Leon, not the divorce. The documents, the evidence, the records. Always the records. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Vanessa surprised him. Did he really try to access the account? The question hung in the air. Direct, simple, and for the first time since this situation began, Leon sensed genuine uncertainty. Not manipulation, not strategy, uncertainty. Interesting, very interesting, because uncertainty meant something important. Vanessa no longer fully trusted Marcus. Leon answered carefully. The records speak for themselves. Vanessa looked down, a small reaction, but meaningful. Then she asked another question. Were the transfer requests real? Again, not denial, not defense, questions. That represented a major shift. Leon nodded. Yes. The answer landed heavily. She looked away. Toward the warehouse. Toward the old company sign. Toward the life she once ignored. Several seconds passed. Then she laughed softly. Not because anything was funny. The kind of laugh people make when reality begins replacing assumptions. I feel stupid. Leon didn't respond, because saying yes would be cruel, and saying no would be dishonest. Eventually, Vanessa spoke again. I thought I knew what was happening. Another pause. I really thought I did. Leon remembered something Harold once said. People rarely make decisions based on facts alone. Most decisions begin with stories. Then people search for facts that support those stories. Vanessa had built a story. Marcus fit that story. Leon didn't. Now reality was attacking the story, and reality was winning. What did you think was happening? Leon asked. She laughed again, this time more bitterly. I thought Marcus understood money. Interesting answer. Not love, not relationships. Money. That revealed a lot. Vanessa continued. He always seemed confident. He always had answers. He always knew what to say. Leon listened. Because people reveal things when they're finally being honest. She looked around the property again, then toward the warehouse office. You know what I realized recently? Leon waited. I never asked where any of this came from. The statement lingered, because it was true. She never had, not really. The trust, the warehouse, the business history, the records, the account, all of it existed openly. Nothing had been hidden. She simply never looked closely. Why would she? She thought she already knew the story. Vanessa walked several steps toward the building, then stopped. When we got married, I thought we'd build everything together. Leon said nothing. She turned back toward him. Somewhere along the way, I started measuring everything. The honesty surprised him. Maybe because it arrived so late. Maybe because it sounded genuine. She continued. Houses, cars, trips, income, status. The list kept growing. Then she shook her head. And Marcus always seemed like he had more. Leon remembered every dinner conversation, every comparison, every subtle criticism, every remark about ambition. Now they sounded different. Now they sounded expensive, emotionally expensive, financially expensive, legally expensive. A phone rang. Vanessa looked down. The screen illuminated. Her expression changed immediately. Not fear, not surprise, recognition, then concern. She answered. Hello. Silence. She listened. Then her face slowly drained of color. Leon couldn't hear the conversation. He didn't need to. The reaction told him enough. Something significant had happened. Very significant. Vanessa listened for nearly 30 seconds, then spoke quietly. You're serious? Another pause, then, okay. She ended the call. For several moments, she simply stared at the phone, motionless. The evening suddenly felt much colder. Leon waited. Eventually, she looked up. What happened? She swallowed, then answered. My attorney. Not good. People rarely receive pleasant calls from attorneys at sunset. What about... Vanessa looked away. The hesitation lasted several seconds, long enough to matter. Then she finally spoke. The discovery requests. Leon remained silent. She continued. They found additional communications. Interesting. Very interesting. What kind? Vanessa laughed once, a humorless sound. The kind my attorney says I should have seen months ago. That answer revealed more than details would have, because attorneys rarely speak that way without reason. She looked down again, then shook her head. I defended him. Marcus, of course. The realization was becoming painful now, not because Leon was exposing her, because the documents were, and documents don't care about emotions. They don't care about explanations. They don't care about intentions. They simply exist. Vanessa finally looked directly at Leon. The confidence that once defined her was gone, not destroyed, just replaced by clarity, a painful kind of clarity. I think he used me. The statement arrived quietly. No drama, no tears, no performance, just realization. Leon studied her for several moments, then answered honestly. I think he used opportunities. Vanessa frowned. What does that mean? It means you weren't the target. She looked confused. Leon glanced toward the warehouse, then toward the city beyond. The opportunities were. The house, the accounts, the access, the trust, the money. Everything Marcus pursued followed the same pattern. Opportunity first, people second. Vanessa absorbed the answer slowly, because deep down she probably already knew. The phone remained in her hand, the attorney's call still fresh, the discovery request still expanding, the evidence still accumulating, and somewhere inside all those documents sat a version of Marcus she no longer recognized. Finally, she asked one last question, the most important question of the evening. What happens now? Leon looked at the old warehouse, at the company Harold built, at the systems that protected it, at the records that preserved it. Then, back at Vanessa. The truth catches up. The words weren't emotional. They weren't threatening. They weren't satisfying. They were simply accurate. And judging by the look on Vanessa's face, she was finally beginning to understand that. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, neither of them realized just how quickly the truth was about to catch up with Marcus Holloway. But it was coming. And this time it wasn't arriving through Leon. It was arriving through the legal system. The settlement conference took place 6 weeks later. By then, almost everything had changed. Not publicly. Publicly, the divorce still looked ordinary. 2 professionals ending a marriage. Property division. Financial disagreements. Routine legal procedures. Nothing unusual. But beneath the surface, the situation had become something very different. The evidence had continued growing. The document trail had expanded, and the confidence Marcus Holloway once carried had nearly disappeared. The mediation office occupied the top floor of a downtown Denver building overlooking the city. Large windows, neutral decor, quiet hallways, everything designed to encourage agreement, or at least reduce conflict. Leon arrived first, naturally. Rebecca arrived moments later carrying 2 banker boxes. Not 1, 2. Months of documentation, months of records, months of timestamps, months of evidence. The boxes themselves made a statement. Preparation often does. Vanessa arrived shortly afterward with Gregory Mills. Marcus wasn't there. That immediately caught Leon's attention. For months, Marcus had inserted himself into nearly every major decision. Now he was absent. Interesting. Rebecca noticed too. He's not coming. Leon nodded. I figured. His attorney advised against it. That was even more interesting, because it suggested Marcus finally understood the danger, or at least part of it. The mediator entered. Introductions followed. Ground rules followed. Then the process began. The first hour focused on ordinary issues: the house, vehicles, retirement accounts, household property, insurance obligations. Nothing dramatic, nothing unexpected. Leon remained calm, the same way he had throughout the entire process. Not because he enjoyed the situation, because emotion wouldn't improve the outcome. Facts would, and facts were already on his side. Eventually, the conversation shifted toward the trust account, the issue that had triggered everything, the issue Marcus had pursued so aggressively, the issue Vanessa had once assumed belonged to both of them. The mediator reviewed several documents, then looked up. This appears relatively straightforward. Rebecca nodded. It is. Gregory didn't argue. That told Leon everything he needed to know. 6 months earlier, the trust account had been a battlefield. Now it wasn't even a debate. The documentation was overwhelming. Formation records, trust agreements, historical funding records, inheritance documentation, ownership certifications. Every piece supported the same conclusion. The trust remained entirely separate, protected, untouched, not marital property, not divisible, not negotiable. The issue disappeared within minutes, a surprisingly quiet ending to the conflict that started everything. Then the focus shifted toward debt. That conversation became more difficult, because discovery had revealed something uncomfortable. Several obligations connected to Marcus's ventures carried Vanessa's signature. Some were small, some were not. All shared one characteristic. They originated after the separation began. Rebecca presented the timeline carefully. No accusations, no speeches, just dates, documents, signatures, records. The mediator reviewed everything. Then Gregory reviewed everything. Eventually, even Vanessa reviewed everything. The room remained quiet, because there wasn't much to argue about. The paperwork existed. The signatures existed. The obligations existed. Reality doesn't become less real because someone dislikes it. For nearly an hour, discussions continued. Responsibility, allocation, liability, payment structures, complicated topics. But unlike earlier stages of the divorce, nobody was arguing about facts anymore. Only consequences. The distinction mattered. Around noon, the mediator requested a break. People scattered, coffee, phone calls, private conversations. Leon stood near a window overlooking downtown Denver. Traffic moved steadily below. Cloud shadows drifted across the city. The world looked exactly the same as it had 6 months earlier, yet everything felt different. Rebecca joined him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she asked a simple question. Any regrets? Leon considered it. The answer surprised him. No. Rebecca nodded. Good. Another pause. Then she smiled slightly. You know, most people would have exploded months ago. Leon laughed quietly. Probably. Most people would have confronted Marcus. Probably. Most people would have tried to win arguments. Leon looked out the window. The answer came easily. Arguments aren't evidence. Rebecca smiled. Exactly. That had been the entire lesson. Not just for this case, for life. People talk. People accuse. People speculate. Records endure. The afternoon session began shortly afterward. Progress came quickly, faster than anyone expected, perhaps because reality had become impossible to avoid. Vanessa accepted responsibility for debts connected to her post-separation financial decisions. Leon accepted responsibility for obligations clearly connected to his own accounts. The house would be sold, remaining equity divided, retirement assets addressed, personal property distributed, clean, organized, orderly, exactly the kind of resolution Leon preferred. Then one final topic emerged. Marcus Holloway. Not directly, indirectly, through references, documents, discovery materials. The mediator approached the issue carefully. Rebecca approached it even more carefully. No one needed dramatic accusations. The documentation already existed. Attempted transfer records, ownership modification efforts, questionable financial documents, the folder from the coffee shop. Everything sat inside the record. Everything preserved. Everything available. The conclusion was simple. Any issues involving Marcus would proceed separately through appropriate channels. The divorce would not become a circus. Leon appreciated that. Very much. Justice doesn't require spectacle. It requires process. And the process was already moving. By late afternoon, the settlement terms were complete. The final draft sat on the conference table. Dozens of pages, months of conflict condensed into legal language. The mediator reviewed the final terms, one section at a time. Everyone listened. Everyone agreed. Then came the signatures. Gregory signed. Rebecca signed. Vanessa signed. Finally, the document reached Leon. He looked at the final page, not emotionally, not triumphantly, just carefully, the same way he reviewed everything. One final time. Then he signed. The pen moved smoothly across the paper. Simple, quiet, permanent. For a moment, nobody spoke. The process that had consumed nearly a year was effectively over. The mediator congratulated everyone. Attorneys exchanged handshakes. Papers were collected. Files were closed. People began leaving. Vanessa remained seated, just for a moment, long enough for Leon to notice. Eventually, she stood. Their eyes met briefly across the room. No anger remained. No bitterness. Just distance. And perhaps understanding. Not complete understanding, but more than before. She nodded once. Leon nodded back. Nothing needed to be said. Some lessons arrive through conversations. Others arrive through consequences. Vanessa turned and walked away. A chapter closed. Quietly. Exactly the way it should. Later that evening, Leon sat alone in his car outside the mediation office. The city lights reflected across the windshield. The signed settlement rested on the passenger seat. For several minutes, he simply sat there, thinking. Not about Marcus, not about Vanessa, not about victory, because that wasn't what this felt like. Victory implies defeating someone. This felt different. This felt like surviving something, something unnecessary, something preventable, something expensive. His phone vibrated. A message from Rebecca. Short, professional, typical Rebecca. Settlement finalized. Trust protected. No further action required on your end. Leon read it twice, then placed the phone down. Outside, Denver continued moving. Inside the car, silence settled. The kind of silence that follows the end of a long storm. The storm was over, but one final piece remained. Because although the divorce had ended, the consequences of Marcus Holloway's decisions were only beginning. A small backyard, a quiet street lined with mature trees, the kind of neighborhood people rarely post about online, which suited Leon perfectly. On most mornings, he woke before sunrise, made coffee, reviewed emails, walked along the lake before work. Simple routines, predictable routines. He appreciated predictability more than ever. The divorce had taught him something important. Chaos rarely arrives all at once. It arrives through small compromises, small assumptions, small ignored details, and eventually those details become expensive. The house wasn't the only change. Several months earlier, Leon had made another decision. He reopened part of the family business, not the trucking operation itself. That industry had changed too much. Instead, he launched Washington Freight Consulting, a small advisory firm helping transportation companies improve compliance systems, documentation practices, and operational controls. The work suited him. Most clients didn't need dramatic solutions. They needed organization, processes, records, the same things Leon valued his entire life. Business grew steadily. Nothing explosive, nothing flashy, exactly the way he preferred. One Tuesday morning, Leon sat inside his office reviewing a client report when his phone rang. The caller ID displayed Rocky Mountain Federal Credit Union. He answered immediately. Leon Washington. A familiar voice greeted him. Denise Parker, the branch manager. Good morning, Mr. Washington. Morning. Denise sounded cheerful. That alone was unusual. Bankers rarely called just to socialize. I wanted to let you know we've completed everything. Leon leaned back slightly. Everything. He already knew what she meant. The investigation, the account review, the fraud documentation, months of procedures, months of analysis, months of records. Denise continued. The account is fully cleared. No liability, no ownership concerns, no pending reviews. The words felt surprisingly light, not because Leon had worried, because finality matters, even when you expect the outcome. Denise continued. We also wanted to thank you. Leon smiled slightly. For what? Most people don't maintain records the way you do. That almost made him laugh. His father would have appreciated the compliment, maybe more than Leon did. After the call ended, he sat quietly for several moments. Then he opened a drawer. Inside rested a thick folder, one of the last remaining folders connected to the divorce, carefully organized, naturally. Inside sat the final bank confirmation, the final legal documents, the final settlement paperwork, the final records, everything complete, everything finished. Leon placed Denise's confirmation inside, then closed the folder. Another chapter closed. Several weeks later, he learned what happened to Marcus Holloway. Not directly, not through gossip, through public records, the same place Leon preferred getting information. Facts, not stories. Several business entities connected to Marcus had dissolved. Others remained under financial pressure. Multiple civil issues continued moving through separate channels. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just consequences, the kind that accumulate over time. Marcus disappeared from social media. The luxury photographs stopped. The constant public appearances stopped. The image slowly faded, and eventually people stopped asking about him altogether. That was perhaps the most surprising part. The world moves on quickly, much quicker than most people realize. Vanessa remained in Denver. Their lives occasionally crossed through necessary administrative matters. Nothing more. No dramatic reconciliation. No renewed conflict. Just distance. Professional distance. Respectful distance. Several months after the settlement, she sent a brief email. Not emotional, not lengthy. A simple message, thanking him for handling everything professionally. Leon read it once, then archived it. The email didn't change anything. It didn't need to. The past remained the past. One crisp autumn morning, Leon drove to the old Washington Freight warehouse, the same warehouse where he had spoken with Vanessa months earlier, the same warehouse his father built, the same warehouse that indirectly protected everything. The building looked exactly as it always had, solid, quiet, unimpressive. Leon smiled at that, because people had underestimated the warehouse too, just as they underestimated him. Appearances have a way of distracting people. The warehouse wasn't glamorous. Neither was the trust. Neither was the documentation. Neither was the man maintaining all of it. Yet those things survived, while flashier things disappeared. Leon spent an hour walking through the property, reviewing maintenance items, checking records, planning future improvements. Nothing emotional, just stewardship. Eventually, he entered Harold's old office. The desk remained. The filing cabinets remained. The sunlight still entered through the same windows. For several minutes, Leon sat quietly, not reminiscing, reflecting. There is a difference. Memories focus on what happened. Reflection focuses on what was learned. Harold had been right. Ownership mattered. Records mattered. Preparation mattered. Not because they prevent problems, because they protect people when problems arrive. Eventually, Leon stood, opened the cabinet beside the desk, and placed one final folder inside, the divorce folder, the last one. Then he closed the drawer, locked it, turned the key. Simple action, small action, final action. When he walked outside, the morning air felt cool and clean. The Colorado sky stretched endlessly overhead. Sunlight illuminated the warehouse sign. Washington Freight. The name remained, just as his father intended. Leon locked the office door, walked across the lot, and climbed into his truck. Before leaving, he paused briefly, looking back one final time. The account Marcus wanted. The account Vanessa misunderstood. The account that triggered everything. It still existed. Protected. Untouched. Exactly where it belonged. Not because Leon fought harder. Not because he shouted louder. Not because he won arguments. Because he prepared years before the conflict ever arrived. That was the real difference. Most people prepare after trouble begins. Leon prepared long before. The engine started. The truck rolled forward. The warehouse disappeared gradually in the rearview mirror. Ahead lay new clients, new projects, new routines, a quieter future, the kind Leon preferred. As he drove toward Denver, his phone remained silent. No alerts, no attorneys, no investigations, no emergency meetings, just silence. The peaceful kind, the earned kind. And somewhere behind him sat a locked file cabinet containing thousands of pages of evidence that had proven one simple truth. Facts outlast stories. Records outlast assumptions. And patience, when paired with preparation, is often stronger than any confrontation. Some people think strength is measured by who speaks the loudest, reacts the fastest, or wins the biggest argument. This story reminds us that real strength often looks much quieter. Leon never won because he was more aggressive. He won because he stayed calm when others became careless. He kept records when others relied on assumptions, and he trusted facts more than emotions. Many of us will never face a situation exactly like this one, but almost everyone experiences some form of betrayal, misunderstanding, or unfair judgment. Sometimes the people who underestimate us see only what is visible on the surface. They don't see the preparation, the discipline, or the sacrifices that happened long before the conflict began. That's why patience matters. That's why documentation matters. And that's why truth usually becomes stronger with time. Now I'd love to hear from you. If someone you trusted gave a stranger access to your finances, your business, or something important in your life, what would you have done? Would you have confronted them immediately, or would you have handled it the way Leon did? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's story features another quiet man. Everyone underestimated until one overlooked document changed everything.